Hey there, fellow sea glass lovers. Thanks so much for joining me today. I'm quite excited about today's art project. Today I'm going to show you how to make a sea glass mosaic of the Sea Glass Witch. Now, what's the Sea Glass Witch? I'm sure you're wondering. So this mosaic is inspired by this children's book called The Sea Glass Witch. This was written by Rum Charles, illustrated by Ella Wright. The illustrations in this book are just so delightful, and the story is very enchanting. The Sea Glass Witch goes on quite the adventure. So I connected with the people who did this book. They're in Australia. Now I live in Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia and Australia are opposite ends of the earth. They are halfway around the world from me. So it's really neat that people from halfway around the world can connect over a common interest, being sea glass. Because, you know, the sea glass world may not be big, but it's worldwide. There's so many people around the world that love sea glass. So in today's project, I'm going to create a sea glass mosaic, and I have permission of the authors of this book to do that, to use the imagery of the Sea Glass Witch. Now, if you're interested in this book, I'll put a link to where you can purchase it. Now, for today's project, if you want to make a sea glass witch of your own, I'm also going to post a pattern on my website. So I'll put a link to my website as well. So let's get started on this project. I think it's going to be so much fun. So this is a story about Bakiri, who lived in a little cottage that was nestled between the sea and the woods. And one of my favorite images in this book was from right here, where Bakiri first created the Sea Glass Witch. And I love the imagery of the Sea Glass Witch and the moon and the beach. So what I did was I drew a pattern. I'll show you my pattern. And I drew this pattern of the Sea Glass Witch walking on the beach with the moon. And this is what I'm going to use for this sea glass mosaic. So let me show you what you need for this project. You need the pattern, or if you wanted to download the pattern, you can, or you could draw your own Sea Glass Witch. You need a frame. I would recommend an 8x10 frame, but I'm using one slightly bigger. Now you need some seafoam colored sea glass for the Sea Glass Witch itself. Now I'm going to show you that I've got a lot more sea glass than what it's actually going to take to create this piece, but it's nice to have more than you need for the purposes of a sea glass mosaic. So you've got lots to pick from. And then I've got some white sea glass for the moon. I have some green sea glass for the water. I have some light brown sea glass for the sky, because it's a night sky, the moon is out, and I love using brown for a night sky, and this is more of my light color brown. And then I have a tray of dark color brown for the sand and the shore. So I've got all that sea glass to pick from, not going to use nearly that much sea glass. And then I also have a tray of other beach treasures. So I have some blue there, I've got a few shells and a few rocks. And then I have some hanging hardware, because when I'm finished, I'll show you how I'm going to hang this piece. Now you need some silicone to use as your glue, and this is my favorite silicone. If you can't get this kind, sometimes I use this one, sometimes I use this one. Whatever you can get, just make sure that you get a silicone that says clear or dries clear on it. This one says dries clear, this one says clear. These products go on white and then they dry clear, but if you have one that goes on clear and stays clear, that's fine as well. Just need your silicone. Other than that, I like to use a couple of wooden sticks for cleaning up messy bits, craft tweezers, and a bit of paper towel to clean up my excess. So, first step, gather all your materials. So step 2 is to prepare your frame. So I've already prepared my frame. What I did was I took the backing off and I put the glass into the frame, and then I took my silicone and I put a bead of silicone. So I just ran a bead of silicone all the way around the edges like that. Now that would have gone on white, but now you can see it's all clear because I've let it set. So you should leave it to sit at least overnight. So I hope you didn't plan to start this project today and finish it today. This is a project that takes quite a while. So I've let mine set, and now my frame is all ready. So step 3, sort your sea glass by color and by size. I don't have to do a whole lot of size sorting, except that on my sand colors, I know I'm going to want some nice big browns for the forefront. So sometimes I'll just take some of my bigger ones and set them aside, just so that I know where they are when it comes to doing that part of the mosaic. So step 4 is to get your pattern ready. So take your pattern, if you're using my pattern, print it off the computer. Now it's in a picture form, so if you want to print it off bigger, you can. I printed mine off a little bit bigger. You want to cut it to the size of your glass or slightly smaller. I have mine cut slightly smaller, and I'm going to tape it to the back of my frame, or the back of the glass rather. So the one thing I would tell you to make sure you do, use a straight edge. Make sure that the horizon line is at a 90-degree angle with the side of your frame before you tape it on. So I like using a ruler for that, because if it's not at a 90-degree angle, your horizon line is going to be crooked. And there are very few straight lines in nature, but a horizon line over water is definitely one of them. So it's worth taking the time to make sure your horizon line is straight. So make sure that's well taped on before you flip it over. And then when you flip it over, you can see, there you go, you have your pattern to follow. And then I just arrange the pieces on top according to the pattern on the back. So step 5, I have my seafoam, my tray of seafoam sea glass here. And the first thing I'm going to do is create the sea glass witch. So one of the things I would recommend is to dig through all your sea glass and find pieces that are kind of pointy for the bottoms of the dress here, because this is a really nice feature of the sea glass witch. She has this pointy dress that really lends itself well to pointy pieces of sea glass, and also for her hair, because you want to emphasize the locks of hair coming down. What I typically do is I'll lay out a few pieces and then I'll start to glue. I find if I lay out the entire piece and then start to glue, I'll often find myself really rearranging the pieces, and I don't tend to stick to what I had originally started to do. So I'll lay out a few of these. Now to attach the pieces of sea glass, I take my Quick Seal kitchen and bath adhesive caulk, and I want to put on just enough silicone to make it stick. If you use too much, it's going to be messy. If you don't use enough, it's not going to stick. So I'll attach a few of these, and then I'll show you a little bit what I like to do here. Whoops. Now there isn't one way to do this. Everyone has different pieces of sea glass. So no matter what you do, your sea glass witch is going to be totally unique from everybody else's. And you can make all sorts of different decisions on how you want to arrange your sea glass. Now this is where I use my barbecue skewers, because I always get little messy bits that creep out from behind the piece of sea glass. So I take this, I've got a pointy end and a flat end, and it helps me clean up some of these messy bits, and you want to do that. Believe me, if you don't, once it dries, even though it dries clear, it can look quite messy. So it's worth taking the extra time. This is a slow process. Now I'll let you watch me attach some more pieces, and while I'm doing that, I'm going to read to you some of the story of the sea glass witch. One day, as Bakiri walked along the shore close to his home, he found the most unusual, beautiful, smooth glass rock he'd ever seen. The rock was a blue-green color, with a soft glowing light that seemed to be coming from within the rock itself, almost as if the rock wasn't a rock at all, but somehow a curled-up form in the shape of a rock. Bakiri gathered it up in both his arms and took it to his cottage. "Oh," he thought, "this will be my masterpiece. I shall make a statue the likes of which the world has never seen." And with that he set to work. Day and night he labored, crafting the unusual glass into the figure of a splendid, motionless woman. He blew, he cut, and he polished, until one evening his work was done. There stood in the moonlight the most wonderful statue he had ever seen, glinting with a subtle blue and green light. "Oh," cried Bakiri, "you are the most beautiful, and I will love thee for all time." He stared at his statue with great longing and desire, for he wished her to be real. That night was a special night. It was the magical perigee night of the flower moon of May, when the moon is bigger and brighter and fuller than at any other time. As he marveled, the soft blue light of the moon shone down and in through the window, bathed his statue in a radiant glow. Then these words drifted across the warm May evening air: "Across the sea and on my tides I've heard your words and shall comply. The statue that you now see will come to life to be with thee." As the words faded into the night air, a little cloud passed over the moon, darkening the room. As the cloud receded, the brightest of the bright lights flooded the small cottage. Bakiri shielded his eyes. When he opened them, there she stood. Now, one thing I would point out here is that I am leaving a little bit of space between each of my pieces of sea glass. I prefer to do that because I like the look of it. I know sometimes when people do mosaics, they push the pieces right up against so they're touching one another. So you may be able to tell from the video that I am trying not to have the pieces of sea glass actually touch. So use some bigger pieces in the dress and in the hair, and use some nice smaller pieces. Your pieces don't have to exactly match the pattern, but you'll be surprised. That's the magic of mosaic. You put all these pieces together and they do give the impression of the shape that you are trying to build. So step 6 is to complete the moon. Now it takes the silicone quite a while to set, so I let this sit for a little bit before I'm starting the moon, because I don't want any of the aqua pieces from the sea glass on the sea glass witch to move out of place. So when I'm doing a shape like a moon, what I prefer to do is to do the outline first. And this is a place where I really do want the outline to be really round. So I want it to go right along the edge of the line. So it's, believe me, it is worth taking your time when it comes to doing the moon to make sure that you're laying your pieces right along the line of the moon. So the next step is the water, and I'm going to do all the water in green. So the key with water is to find the smallest little green pieces that you have and line them up along the horizon line. So you want your horizon line to be straight, definitely straight, and definitely at right angles with the side of your frame. Because when water is sitting out on the horizon, it is straight. So I've gathered up a bunch of my tiny sea glass for that, and I'll line that up, and then as you go down in the water, start to get, like, then you get a little bit bigger, and then a little bit bigger, and then maybe a few nice big pieces down at the very water's edge. And then it gives you that perspective of distance in the water. That's the purpose for doing that. The other thing that can give you distance, I often like to put a sailboat out in the water. So if you put a small sailboat way out in the distance, like the sea glass witch is walking along the beach, and so this is going to give you the distance perspective so that the sea glass witch is close, the sailboat is way off, so you get that feeling of looking out over the water. So all that section between the horizon line and the beach is green. So the next step, I have my tray of dark brown for the sand and the light brown for the sky. So I'm just going to work away at filling in all the dark brown down at the bottom, and then the sky is going to be all these light browns. So it's going to be a night sky. So I'll be filling all of this in. Now the other thing I like to do at this stage is to add a few interesting details. So this is where some of your beach treasures come into play. So I want to put a couple of blue up here in the sky, so it's going to be like a big crane flying through the sky off in the distance. And I always like to put in a nukshuk in my pieces. So I picked out some blue sea glass, and I'm going to make an nukshuk down here on the bottom. So I'll put that there in this corner. And the other thing, this is where you can look through some of your treasures and pick out some of your favorite seashells. I've got this beautiful purple shell. It's nice on both sides, but this is something you're going to see from both sides anyway. So to have a nice purple shell down there will be nice. And I always like to have a rock with a hole in it, a hagstone. So hagstones are a sign of good luck. So it's kind of neat to have some of those in your sea glass pieces as well, if you get them where you are. And then sometimes I'll make little footprints or little animals or something crawling in the sand. And in this piece, I'm going to put a turtle. So I have the body of the turtle. I want the turtle down near the forefront because this again helps you in creating perspective. So your turtle here, if it's near the forefront, it's going to make you feel like this is close. And then you've got the sea glass witch, which is close. And then as you get further and further away, images get smaller. So it gives you that feeling of distance. So it just adds a little bit of detail. And I'll go ahead, and this is where the sand is also helpful. If I put some of my smaller pieces of dark up near the top of the sand, then it's going to help create some distance as well. It was kind of interesting. I had a message from Rum Charles, who wrote the story about the sea glass witch, and in Australia right now, they're in the middle of summer, and he was saying they've got all these really warm temperatures and some beautiful weather going on in Australia right now. Well, today here in Nova Scotia, we are having a major snowstorm. It's cold out and the wind is blowing, and it's not the most pleasant day. I would definitely not want to be on the beach today in Nova Scotia. I tell you, I might like to be in Australia today though. Summer beach weather. So I'm just going to work away, pick through my pieces of sea glass to find all the pieces that fit together, like the pieces of a puzzle, to fill in the rest of my sea glass witch mosaic. So after you get all your sea glass on, sit back and take a look and ask yourself, is there anything else I can add just to add a bit more interest? When I sat back and looked, I decided I had this kick up on the bottom, which is a piece of sea glass with a lip on it from the bottom of a bottle, and I thought that's a great spot to add another point of interest. I added a shell, a little yellow piece of sea glass, and a little gray piece of sea glass, which are really special pieces. Just adds another interest. So I've got everything done on my front. I'm going to flip it over, remove the tape, and take the pattern off. So you can see where the silicone is still white in a lot of spots, so it means it's not ready to hang. I don't like to hang my pieces until all of the silicone has dried clear. That means it's really well set. One thing I do add at this point, I like to sign my artwork. So you can just use a marker and sign the frame or do something like that. It's totally up to you. What I like to do is I take a piece of sea pottery, and on this one I wrote Sea Glass Witch and I sign my name. So then what I do is I put that on the back, usually behind a big piece of sea glass so that you don't see it from the front. But I know it's signed from the back. And it's underneath the lip of the frame here, so it's going to be secure there. Now the only thing to do is to add the hanging hardware. So I'm going to take my 2 eye hooks here and screw them in near the top of the frame. So I have my 2 eye hooks screwed into the back of the frame, and then I take my picture hanging wire and I'll attach one end of it to one of the hooks. Now I'm not going to attach the other end until I've got it in the window and making sure that the length of my hanging wire is just the right length. You don't want it too long or too short. You want it to hang just in the right spot in your window. So I'll just leave that loose for now. And then I'm going to take my cup hook and I'll screw that right in the center of the window, in the window casing, the wooden part of the window casing. And then that's really strong enough to hold a piece this size. I've hung a number of pieces in windows like that, and it's held over time really well. So I'll wait till that is all set clear, and then I'll hang it in the window and I'll show you some pictures. So thanks so much for joining me for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it inspires you to create a sea glass witch of your own. So until next time, I hope you make it out to the beach, and happy sea glass hunting.